Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and today we are changing up a little bit. Instead of speaking about global terrorism, we're going to talk to you about a group that is truly behind everything. A terrorist organization, you could say in its own way. Who is that? Skull and Bones. Now, I want to thank you for watching the first program we did. That got still going on about 510 views or so. And thank you for sharing that program. But this program and the future programs coming up this week, share them all by email everywhere. Let's break the 500 viewing, get a few thousand, or even get up to the big channels with a few million views. Because this information needs to be shared. And we welcome Brother Alexis Bonello to the show.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio. We break all bounds. We're totally behind it and discover it. And today we're going to talk about the Lodge of Terror. And it's the title because it turns out, according to the research done by a great scholar on American history by the name of Sutton, that Skull and Bones is behind the murders of hundreds of millions of people, the theft of trillions of dollars from the public treasury, and the manipulation of everything you see in the news today. They're behind everything. And why you can't see it, they're also behind that, okay? And this is truly the organization that's the enemy of humanity. This is truly the terror of terrorist organizations. They're far more evil than ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Matter of fact, they most likely created Al-Qaeda and ISIS for their purposes, okay? So this is the organization. You need to know its name. You need to know what it's about, when it was founded, and who's behind it, and who are their pawns in society. Mm-hmm. And we're bringing you this information so you know how to defend yourself and know who your real enemy is. And they're behind the scamdemic, okay? And they're behind 9/11, and they're behind the stock market crash of '29 and the Second World War and the assassination of President Kennedy. It's all their work. Mm-hmm. Okay, so where to begin, AJ? You're reading one of the great books by Sutton, the book I think he considered his greatest of all the works he did on history, mm-hmm. On American history. And a little before I ask you to introduce that book, I'll say something about Sutton was an Englishman who came to work for the Hoover Institute in the United States and started researching what was really going on. And he published an article on how it was insane, a book on how it was insane for the U.S. to have funded the Soviets during the Second World War, during Lend-Lease. He lost his job. He went on to investigate how Wall Street backed the Russian Revolution, how they backed the rise of Adolf Hitler, how the hardware used by the Soviet Union during the Cold War was being manufactured in the United States and shipped out secretly. You wonder where those 2.3 trillion from the US Pentagon went that no one can find out? It went to building up the entire Soviet military machine during the Cold War. That wasn't done in Russia, that was done in the United States. It was all done secretly. So they could keep the orchestrated politics going on, keep the money flowing from the public treasury into the military industrial establishment and into the hands of the Skull and Bones cartel. And no sooner we did our program last week that our website was our radio website was hacked by someone in Marietta, Georgia, the headquarters of Lockheed Martin. And I don't think that was a coincidence. So now let's talk about Sutton's book. What's the title of this book? So people can find this free on the internet and download it and read it too.
Yeah. It is, let's see here.
AJ?
America's Secret Establishment, the Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones. Now, I've linked the PDF on the show website for you can download it free. So you can get it there and enjoy. Now, this is from the introduction of the book. This activity, in turn, had generated other articles and books by other authors. But my real intent to generate an exploration of Hegelian influence in modern America has not been fulfilled. In great part, this can be attributed to the educational system based on the statist Hegelian philosophy, in which has already achieved the dumbing down of America. This disastrous, destructive philosophy, the source of both Nazism and Marxism, has infected and corrupted our constitutional republic. Much of the blame for this corruption is with an elitist group of Yale bonesmen. The symbol of skull and bones and their Hegelian philosophy says it all, although with typical duplicity, they would have you believe otherwise. Hegelianism glorifies the state, the vehicle for the dissemination of status and materialist ideas and policies in education, science, politics, and economics. Wonder why we have a dumbed-down society? Look no further than the bonesman Trokia, who imported the Prussian education system into the U.S. in the 19th century. A political philosophy in direct opposition to the classical liberalism nurtured in 19th century British and American history. In classical liberalism, the state is always subordinate to the individual. In Hegelian staticism, as we see in Nazism and Marxism, the state is supreme, and the individual exists only to serve the state. Our two-party Republican-Democrat, one Hegelian party, no one else welcome or allowed, system is a reflection of this Hegelianism. A very small group, by using Hegel, can manipulate and to some extent control society for its own purposes. More than that, reflect on their pirate flag. Emblem found on poison bottles, the symbol of the Nazi Death's Heads Division in World War II. Not only did Skull and Bones become a major force in drug smuggling, the Bush and Prescott families in the 1860s, but in true Hegelian fashion, generated antithesis, the so-called war on drugs. This hypocritical policy maintains the price of drugs, controls supply, and puts millions in jail, while the gainers, in great part, are none other than the same bonesmen who passed the laws to prohibit. Bonesman Taft, 1904.
Okay, so let me explain something about Hegelianism. The correct pronunciation, Hegelianism, is a bit difficult if you haven't heard the word. So Hegel was a German philosopher who believed that every idea, okay, he's in Ideologues. If you remember our show Ideologue, and if you haven't watched our show on Ideologues, it will really help you to understand our entire program today, because Skull and Bones is an ideological organization, and they're Hegelian. So in the Hegelian ideology, an idea, because of what it is, causes it's contrary to come into existence. And by the opposition of thesis and antithesis, you get a new idea that causes a new contrary to come into existence, okay? It's an ideology that has to do with ideas, okay? And the origin of ideas. On the, put on the material or political level, it's Marxism, because Marxism is based on Hegelian dialectics. Class causes other class to come to existence. The rich cause the poor to come in existence. They fight it out, and there arises the proletariat dictatorship, which develops in the new society. But Hegelianism, used by very dishonest people, can be used as a tool of political control. You have, let's say you want to destroy a Catholic monarchy. So the Lodge would create an anti-monarchical party that wants to destroy the monarchy. And then it would support the monarchical party that wants to defend the monarchy. But since they're both controlled by Freemasonry, as they fight it out, the monarchy falls and is not restored. And the monarchists say, well, we want to bring it back. We just didn't defend it well enough. This is why, for example, the House of Bourbon, which is of the French monarchy, voted to get rid of the last French king, because he was obviously already recruited into the Hegelian system of Freemasonry. And Skull and Bones has used this to a T, controlling every aspect of society. So we're going to discuss who are the members of Skull and Bones, and all your light bulbs and alarms are going to go off, because you're going to realize that you are not living in the land of the free and brave. You are living in the Skull and Bones plantation. Mm-hmm. And you've been there your whole life, and everything you've been fed, they have designed to keep you under control. And you've listened to many programs, AJ and I, that we're not crazy people, we're sane people, and we're not exaggerating. Okay, so we took people complained about our last program and said it's very simplistic. We were just giving you the facts. Okay, now we're going to a scholar who someone brought to our attention, who spent his whole life investigating Skull and Bones and everything going on in the United States, and he published this in a book. He died in 2004 or so 2002, he's not alive right now. So we can't interview him or talk about that. So this is not something. Here's a scholar who's independently confirmed everything that was in our first program, but even more so. And then at the end of the show today, we're going to blow your mind out and show you how controlled the Catholic Church is in the United States through a Skull and Bones organization. Okay, so AJ, continue with the book now.
Yeah. Now you heard the term right and left in TV, political talk. What is it? Well, it's a control device. For Hegelianism, what a word. The state is almighty and seen
Hegelian.
as yeah. He put an S at the end of it. It threw me.
Hegelians are someone who believes in Hegel.
Okay. There we go. The state is almighty and seen as the march of God on earth. Indeed, a state religion. Progress in Hegelian state is through contrived conflict. The clash of opposites makes for progress. If you can control the opposites, you dominate the nature of the outcome. We trace the extraordinary Skull and Bones influence in a major Hegelian conflict, Nazism versus communism. Skull and Bones members were in the dominant decision-making positions. Bush, Harriman, Stutzman, Lovett, and so on, all Bonesmen, and instrumental in guiding the conflict through use of right and left. They financed and encouraged the growth of both philosophies and controlled the outcome to a significant extent. This was aided by the reductionist division in science, the opposite of historical wholeness. By dividing science and learning into narrower and narrower segments, it became easier to control the whole through the parts. And education, listen here, folks. The Dewey system was initiated and promoted by Skull and Bones members. Dewey was an ardent statist and a believer in Hegelian idea that a child exists to be trained to serve the state. This requires suppression of individualist tendencies, careful spoon-feeding of approved knowledge. This dumbing down of American education is not easily apparent unless you have studied in both foreign and domestic U.S. universities. And the contrast becomes crystal clear. This dumbing down is now receiving attention. Two excellent books are The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Charlotte Thompson Iserut and The Dumbing Down of America by John Taylor Gatto. Both books trace the process to the impact of education, and both give remarkable detail of the process. We go further in that we trace the import of the system to three Yale's members of Skull and Bones. For Iserut and The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, the American education system begins with Rockefeller and Gates, but in fact, the status system is a reflection of the Hegelian ideas brought to the United States by the Skull and Bones trochia of Gilman, White, Dwight, and then finest by Rockefeller.
Yeah, for those, troika is a Russian germ meaning a triumvirate, okay, a group of three men. So you notice the names, Rockefeller, Gates, Bush. You're going to hear a lot more Bonesmen. So maybe, is there a chapter on the history of the Skull and Bones? We could talk about, help people understand why they're importing German.
Yeah.
So in our previous show, we presented that Skull and Bones was a Masonic lodge from Yale, and it is, okay? But what we didn't know is what Sutton has informed us is that it's actually the auxiliary lodge of a German Masonic lodge out of Berlin.
Those on the inside know it as the Order. Others have known it for more than 150 years as Chapter 322 of the German Secret Society. More formally, for legal purposes, the order was incorporated as the Russell Trust in 1856. It was also once known as the Brotherhood of Death. Those who make light of it or want to make fun of it call it Skull and Bones, or just plain Bones. The American chapter of this German order was founded in 1833 at Yale University by General William Huntington Russell and Alphonsus Taft, who in 1876 became Secretary of War in Grant administration. Alphonsus Taft was the father of William Howard Taft, the only to be both President and Chief Justice of the United States.
Okay, so this is not a small group without power. This is a group that has attained the presidency several times, and we'll hear about that. So why they call themselves 322, it's not yet entirely certain. It could be because they take Demosthenes, who's a famous Greek orator who died in 332 BC, and the fact that they number all things like that. So some things they might do because like fraternities have their strange rituals, or they could be the 332nd lodge founded by this German secret society. So in our last program, we talked about how the Skull and Bones recruited Hitler, but it might be more accurately to say that Hitler was a member of the German secret society, of which Skull and Bones was an auxiliary.
Yeah.
But it explains why the Brown Brothers Harriman, founded by 11 Skull members, spends fortunes, billions, funding the building of the Third Reich. And we talked about in our last program about Thyssen. They funded Thyssen, so this little family owned one small mine all of a sudden had the financial over the entire German steel and coal industry. An interesting note I will add to our report from last time is that Thyssen, when the Second World War broke out, he was against the Second World War. He fled to Switzerland, he was brought back, and he was put in a concentration camp, and Hitler, who had been funded by Brown Brothers Harriman, seizes the entire assets of Thyssen steel manufacturing and makes it a property of the Nazi state. So he was loyal to the money and to the secret lodge, and even Thyssen had to go. And that was a convenient, whether Thyssen really faked being in favor of it or not, but after the war, he basically got off without any punishment because he said he was not in control of it during the war. You know, he was in a concentration camp. He was supposed to be in a concentration camp for 6 years and he didn't die and didn't suffer anything. He must have had some nice lodgings, all I can say. So,
yeah.
Do we know something about the names of famous bonesmen and what offices they attained?
Well, Let's see here. Okay, let's get my eyes a little focused here. The members of 1833. We estimate that any one time, only about 1/4 of the membership is active. Even the active quarter is not always effective and successful. It's instructive to compare 1833 with 1983 and how over the century and a half span, a group of 20 to 30 families has emerged to dominate the order. The very first name on the very first membership list, Samuel Hanshaw Bates, was a private in the Union Army, went west to farm in Santa Rosa, California at the same time, very much in the boondocks, and died in 1879. Life not different to millions of other Americans. In fact, of the first 15 members, actually 14 plus an anonymous member, achievements were not much greater than we would expect from cream of a Yale class. Rufus Hart spent several years in Ohio Senate. Ashel Hooker Lewis was an Ohio legislator for a couple of years. Samuel Marshall was an Illinois state legislator for a while, and Frederick Mather was a New York legislator. Other members, apart from two founders of the order, did nothing much with their lives or for the order. By contrast, the two founding members, William Huntington Russell and Alphonsus Taft, went far. William Russell was a member of the Connecticut State Legislature in 1846 and 47, a general in the Connecticut National Guard from 1862 to 1870, and founded the Colgate and Commercial Institute in New Haven, Connecticut. Alphonsus Taft went further. He was Secretary of War in 1876, the first several members of the order to hold this post down into the 1950s. Taft became U.S. Attorney General in 1876-77, then U.S. Minister to Austria in 1882 to 1884, finally U.S. Ambassador to Russia in 1884 to 1885. During the 150-year interval since 1833, active membership has evolved into a core group of perhaps 20 to 30 families. It seems that active members have enough influence to push their sons and relatives into the order, and there are significant intermarriages among the families. These families fall into two major groups. First, we find old-line American families who arrived on the East Coast in the 1600s, the Whitneys, the Lord, Phelps, Wadsworth, Allen, Bundy, Adams, and so on. Second, we find families who acquired wealth in the last 100 years, sent their sons to Yale, and in time became almost blind families. Harriman, Rockefeller, Payne, Davidson. Some families like Whitney were Connecticut Yankees and acquired wealth in the 19th century. In the last 150 years, few families in the order have gained enormous influence in society and the world. One example is the Lord family. Two branches of this family date from the 1630s, those descended from Nathan Lord and those from Thomas Lord. Other lords arrived in the U.S. over the years but did not enter our discussion. Of these two main branches, only the Thomas Lord group appears to have contributed members to the order. Their ancestry traces to Thomas Lord, who left Essex, England in 1635, in a company led by Reverend Thomas Hooker and settled in what is now Hartford, Connecticut. In fact, part of Hartford is still known as Lord's Hill. The line of descendant of this Lord family is full of DeForest and Lockwood names because intermarriage is more than common among these elite families. The first Lord to be initiated into the order was George DeForest Lord in 1834. A New York lawyer, together with his father Daniel Lord, another Yale graduate, George DeForest Lord established a New York law firm of Lord, Day, and Lord. Among his present-day clients are the New York Times, the Rubin Foundation. The Rubin Foundation is one of the financial angels for the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C.
And that's just one of the families, but also the Forbes family,
Mm-hmm.
the Harrimans we spoke about. Can you give us some more intelligence on some of the other families there? Some of the secretaries of war. I noticed the Secretary of War from 1939 to 45 under Roosevelt. He was a bonesman.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we go. The complete list of the family tree. The Whitney family, the Perkins family, the Stimson family, Taft family, Wadsworth family, Gilman family, the Payne family, Davison family of J.P. Morgan, Pillsbury family, Sloan family, Weyerhaeuser family, they do lumber, Harriman family, railroads, Rockefeller, Standard Oil, Lord family, Bundy family, and Phelps family.
Mm-hmm. And we could add, and then the Harriman recruited the Bush family and the Trump family.
Yep.
And I know Armand Hammer, he started Occidental Petroleum, and that must have been tied with the Rockefeller family, and he recruited Al Gore.
Yep.
And John Kerry is also a bonesman. And I think Clinton,
Yep.
Bill Clinton was also a bonesman. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about the whole ruling elites of the United States. 20 more families that control most of the wealth. To show you how wealthy this is, the Brown Brothers Harriman, which is only one of the Skull and Bones banks, manages $6.5 trillion in assets. Now, the gross domestic product of the United States is only about 24 trillion. So that they manage assets equivalent to a quarter of the entire wealth generated every year in the United States. That's how powerful they are. And Trump just took another 6 trillion out of the Treasury to solve the scamdemic, which they planned and organized. And where is that money going? I bet good chunks of it are going to go to the Brown Brothers Harriman Bank, and their assets next year will be around 12 trillion that they're managing, because that's what it's all about, to rob the public purse, to rob your pocketbooks, your future, and your children's future. And they've had secretaries of commerce. They've had advisors to many presidents, vice presidents. Well, we mentioned that Bush was controlled about it. Nixon, when he ran in 1960, was going to run with Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm.
And so Nixon most likely was either controlled by a Skull and Bones agent, though not a member of Skull and Bones himself. So that means if they bumped off Kennedy, and we know Johnson was a Freemason, we know Eisenhower was chosen by a Skull and Bones Secretary of War to be the chief general in Western Europe. And Eisenhower was involved in getting rid of Patton.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know why they didn't want Patton to invade Germany in the fall of 44. They came up with this whole bridge too far kind of Operation Market Garden, which completely failed. But that was the excuse they used to say to Patton and to the public, we're not going to give Patton the military resources to take Germany down, because their friends in Germany weren't done robbing it of all the wealth, and they weren't done with shipping all this to their allies in South America and North America. So they couldn't let Patton defeat Germany in 44. They had to delay a war another 6 months. And this is the level of control these people have.
Mm-hmm.
And Patton had to be assassinated, or otherwise he would have defeated Eisenhower, which was their man to control Washington. And Eisenhower made the military industrial establishment supreme. And they founded CIA. The founder of CIA was a bonesman, okay? And we already spoke in a previous program on how the CIA took down the governments of Iran and Guatemala in 58 and might have got John the 23rd elected in the conclave of 58. And so pretty much we would say it's highly probable. Vatican II is not a Catholic council. It is a Skull and Bones council. And what are some other interesting things you've come up in Sutton's book, AJ? to whet the appetites of those who can read it.
The British Connection. Some well-read readers may raise the question: How does the order that its families relate to Cecil Rhodes' secret society, Milner's Round Table, the Illuminati, and Jewish secret society equivalents? How do these fit into the picture? We are concerned here only with the core of the purely American phenomenon with German origin. It is undoubtedly linked to overseas groups. The links between the order and Britain go through Lazard Freser's and the private merchant bankers. Notably, the British establishment was also founded at the University of Oxford, and especially All Souls College at Oxford. The British element is called the Group. The group links to the Jewish equivalent through the Rothschilds in Britain. Bold Rothschild was an original member of the Rhodes Inner Circle. The order in the U.S. links to the Guggenheim, Schiff, and Warburg families. There were no Jews at all in the order until very recently. In fact, the order has, as Rosenbaum suggests, some definite anti-Semitic tendencies. Token Jews and token blacks have been admitted in recent years. There's an Illuminati connection. Some details are in this Esquire article. More details will be in our future volumes. All these groups have cooperative and competitive features. But to argue that all the world's ills can be ascribed to any one of these groups is false. The core of the order, like the core of the group, in England comprises about 20 families. In the U.S. case, there are mostly descendants from the original settlers in Massachusetts. New wealth did not enter the order until the mid-19th century, until recently has never dominated the order. On the other hand, key families, the Whitneys, the Harrimans, are linked to their own banking interests. In many ways, these old Yankee families have outsmarted the bankers. The Puritans devoted bankers' wealth to their own objectives without always absorbing the bankers' families. The order controls the substantial wealth of Andrew Carnegie, but no Carnegie has ever been a member of the order. The order used the Ford wealth so flagrantly against the wishes of the Ford family that 2 Fords resigned from the board of the Ford Foundation. No Ford has been a member of the order. The name Morgan has never appeared on a membership list, although some Morgan partners are with the inner core. For example, Davison and Perkins. Interesting, the Astor name is prominent in the group in England, but not in the order in the U.S.
So they know how to co-opt other organizations to their end. And we'll talk about that at the end of the program, about a Catholic organization, which appears that they founded and control. So we're talking about a really evil and devious organization. Catholics, most good Catholics know that the Masonic Lodge is dangerous, but they don't, it's almost never been discussed who they are and what they're doing or have done. And this is because since the French Revolution, the Masonic Order has conquered the Western civilization, and our clergy are constantly either threatened or infiltrated. So now you won't hear anything about it. Matter of fact, they try to make it appear that the new Masonic religion is the Catholic religion. Bergoglio is a Freemason. And all the bishops in communion with Bergoglio are either Freemasons or they're just so stupid they couldn't tell a Freemason if he was standing in front of them performing a satanic Pachamama ceremony. Yeah. So we don't say these things to scare you and to terrorize you, but it would make you to wake up. And in most cases, you just can't go to your local churches anymore because they're all controlled by Satanists. The new liturgy coming out this fall here in Italy is just to make people accept that Bergoglio is the Pope when he's not. And this game they play so heavily layered in philosophical and narrative control that people can't see it, that when Benedict renounces ministerium, but the law requires him to renounce munus, that he hasn't renounced. And they keep lies upon lies to get you to not see what's right in front of your face. And it's a really serious thing. So any other interesting chapters in the book, AJ, you'd like to share some excerpts from?
Now we're going to get into the memorandum number 6, the operations of the order. In 1981, the Anglo-American Establishment by Carroll Quigley was published in New York by a small anti-establishment publisher. Quigley was formerly instructor at Princeton and Harvard, and then professor at the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University. The publisher notes in his introduction that Quigley had been unable to find a major publisher for the manuscript. This is not surprising. The book blows the lid off the British equivalent of the order. The Anglo-American Establishment has nothing at all to do with the American Establishment, which is hardly mentioned, but it has a lot to do with the British Establishment. The publisher probably inserted the word American into the title to enhance marketability in the States. Quigley describes in minute detail the historical operations of the British establishment, controlled by a secret society operating very much as the order operates in the U.S. This is the real significance of Quigley's explosive book, The Group. As we told you, it's known as the Group or just plain U.S. As we said before, was founded in Oxford University, much as the order was founded at Yale, but without the Masonic mumbo jumbo, so they left that all out. And Sutton goes on, as we noted in the Memorandum 5, the group operates in a series of concentric circles, and like the order, consists of old line families, allied with private merchant bankers, known in the U.S. as investment bankers. Bearing in mind the proven existence of the group, the operations of the order, and the kind of penetration it has achieved cannot be explained by mere chance. By examining the order's operations, we can generate a picture of its objectives without access to any eternal constitution or statement of objectives, even if such exists. It may only be word of mouth. By contrast, the group's objective is recorded in Cecil Rhodes' will. It was the extension of British rule throughout the world, the perfecting of a system of immigration from the United Kingdom, and the colonization by British subjects of all lands wherein the means of livelihood are attainable by energy, labor, and enterprise, and the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire. Sorry. Yes, you heard that right, folks. They want America back.
What does Sutton say of that?
Yeah. He says this objective is, of course, ridiculous and somewhat immature, but no less ridiculous and immature than the New World Order objective of the order. Yet the group has controlled British policy for 100 years and still does.
So we have the Skull and Bones isn't like it's the only kind of organization like it in the world, okay? Mm-hmm. Masonic families in other nations have set up similar organizations, and it's not just a unique phenomenon. But Skull and Bones has been uniquely successful because they organized at one of the most elite universities. They recruited people who were neither stupid nor poor, okay? So talented and wealth. So they got among their members people capable of doing something, okay? It's not like they didn't recruit poor people without any money and not without any skills. So very well, from an anthropological point of view, they had excellently organized system, but it was tight-knit families that wanted to maintain the power. And this is why they're heavily involved in eugenics, because they believe that they are racially superior to everyone else. They never admitted Catholics, for example, at Yale and Bones. And they didn't, and as Sutton points out, they've only recently appointed token Jews and token blacks, because, and this is why they funded Hitler. And Hitler's goal was to eliminate lower classes and support higher classes and support all. For this reason, we cannot make light of the fact that they are coordinating everything so that they can have more power and remain in power. You have to snap out and stop drinking the Kool-Aid and to think that they aren't in control. After all this, after all these people with all this wealth have been in power, they don't have any power. To say that they don't have any power would be absurd. For example, did you know that George Soros gave Jared Kushner in 2014 a $250 million line of credit for his real estate empire? I didn't even know Jared Kushner came from a real estate family. He does. And so George Soros also invested $140 million in one of Trump's hotels. And he spent $30 million defeating Tom Cruise so Trump could win the presidency. He also spent $30 million for Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Mm-hmm. So wake up and smell the Kool-Aid. Black Lives Matter and Antifa is not destroying cities or attacking whites and Trump supporters so that Trump will lose. On the contrary, it's to produce, Hegelian dialectics here, the counter-reaction among the people to vote for Trump. Because what they're doing is they created a group that's so offensively, radically left that your natural reaction will be to react contrary against them. And your reaction contrary to them is going to mean you're going to vote for the friend of George Soros. That's why he's putting money in Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Why would he put so much money into the Trump family, more than $400 million, if he wasn't in favor of Trump? Mm-hmm. And if you think more than $400 million invested in Trump's family is not going to make him the friend and defender of George Soros, then you're not in touch with reality, okay? Why can't George Soros's name be mentioned on Fox News?
Yep.
Okay. Why can't it be named? You know, it's not because George Soros controls Fox News and therefore they can't name him. It's because they got a call from the White House and say, don't you dare name him. Because if people figure out that Black Lives Matter and Antifa is supported by a Trump supporter, then they're going to realize that that's why Trump's not going after them. That's why he's allowing the chaos to go on week after week after week. This is a man that is so psychopathic, he would burn all the cities down in America just to get reelected. And why does he want power that much? Why does the lodge need him to have power that much? Does it have something to do with the fact that he's going to rush 100 million vaccines into production and convince you to take the vaccine? Mm-hmm. Now, you have to understand what the target of these eugenicists in the lodge are. They used to be openly saying, let's exterminate the poor, the useless, and the minorities. But after World War II, that was seen to be just distasteful. So what did they do? They funded they changed eugenicist movement's name to Planned Parenthood. They moved it into minority neighborhoods. And Planned Parenthood and abortion have wiped out half of all the minorities in the country. More than 40 million minorities have been aborted. That has actually made America more white. Okay, it's racist. And it's not coming from the Democrats because it's coming from the lodge, because Averell Harriman was one of the big leaders in the Democratic Party, even though his family created the Bushes, who go on to be Republicans. Mm-hmm. And his family gave a loan to Trump's father. And that's why Trump goes from being Democrat to Republican. It's the same thing. We got to get it. You have to say one thing about Trump. Trump is a better face on the skull and bones presidency than the Bushes. The Bushes lost all their capital with those wars in the Mideast, and they were seen for what they were. So they needed a change of face, but the music has not changed. The agenda has not changed. It is still the same organization. And once they get you vaccinated, you and your progeny are gone. You'll be totally destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have created the legal precedent that they can vaccinate everyone. And no one but the people vaccinated will be able to vote, shop, or work. So they will make all the political dissidents their slaves. Okay, they'll starve us to death, and they'll make the people who are genetically destroyed their servant class.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power these people are after now. They're not after 6 trillion out of the treasury. They're after all the wealth on earth. Okay, and this is why they have to get Trump reelected, and this is why they need to burn all the cities down in America to get you to vote for him. And this is why the Catholic reaction is not to vote. Okay, because if you vote for Trump, you're just like the Catholics in Germany who voted for Adolf Hitler when they were told, don't tell me Pius XII was a saint, okay? And he did. He told the Catholic Party to dissolve and join the Nazi Party. So he told Catholics to vote for Hitler. Mm-hmm. So, and don't think that Bergoglio is the enemy. Why does, you know that Trump's ambassador in Rome is one of the biggest supporters of Bergoglio? Because the German Lodge is probably behind the St. Gallen Mafia.
Mm-hmm.
So
now I want to get into a little bit of the modus operandi of the order.
Okay.
It's going to blow your minds, folks. This is from Sutton. Historically, operations of the order have concentrated on society now to change society in a specific manner towards a specific goal, a new world order. We know the elements in society that will have to be changed in order to bring about this new world order. We can then examine the order's actions in this context. More or less, these elements would have to be education, how the population of the future will behave, money, the means of holding wealth and exchanging goods, law, the authority to enforce the will of the state. A world law and a world court is needed for a world state. Politics, direction of the state, economy, the creation of wealth. History, what people believe happened in the past. Psychology, the means of controlling how people think. Philosophy, so that people think well of the controllers. Medicine, the power over health, life, and death. Religion, people's spiritual beliefs, the spur to action for many. The media, what people know and learn about current events. Continuity, the power to appoint who follows in your footsteps. Now, the operations in each of these areas will be detailed in subsequent volumes. For example, in the next volume, the order controls education. We're going to describe how Daniel Coy Gilman, president of Johns Hopkins University, imported Wundt psychological methods from Germany, then welded education and psychology in the U.S. established laboratories, brought these educational laboratories into major universities, and generated hundreds of PhDs to teach a new educational conditioning system. One of the first of these Johns Hopkins doctorates was John Dewey. The result we well know. The educational morass of the 80s, where most kids, not all, can't spell, read, or write, yet can be programmed to mass behavior channels. The order's next move was to control the foundation. They got all the big ones, Carnegie, Ford, Peabody, Slater, Russell Sage, and so on. But the topics of another volume, as in education, the modus operandi of the order was to get in first and set the stage for the future. The initial objective was to establish a direction in an organization, selection of managers intuitive or immoral enough to catch on to the direction, keep the momentum going. In the case of foundations, the order has usually maintained a continuing presence over decades. When it comes to activities by individual members, at first sight, the pattern is confusing and superficially consistent. Let's give some examples. Andrew Carnegie profited from war through his vast steel holdings, but under the guidance of member Daniel Coy Gilman. Carnegie was also the enthusiastic president and financial backer of the American Peace Society. This is seemingly inconsistent. Could Carnegie be for war and peace at the same time? The League to Enforce Peace, founded by members William H. Taft and Theodore Marburg, was promoting peace, yet active in urging U.S. participation in World War I. How could the League be for war and peace at the same time? In the 1920s, W. Averell Harriman was a prime supporter of the Soviets with finance and diplomatic assistance at the time when such aid was against State Department regulations. Harriman participated in Ruscombank, the first Soviet commercial bank. Vice President Max May of Guaranteed Trust, dominated by Harriman Morgan interests, became the first vice president of Ruscombank, in charge of its foreign operations. In brief, an American banker under guidance of a member of the order had a key post in the Soviet bank. But we also find that Averell Harriman, his brother Roland Harriman, and members E.S. James Knight Woolley through the Union Bank, in which they held a major interest, were prime financial backers of Hitler.
So they're funding both sides to create the conflict that will make them profitable. And this shows you, like the Bushes, you mentioned before, the Bushes family has profited on the sale of drugs, and yet they came out with the war on drugs. Most people don't know that leading heads of drug cartels of Latin America have come to the Bush estate in Texas and been treated as honored guests.
Yeah.
Honored guests. And why is the Bush family involved in illegal drug trade? Because the CIA needed income that they couldn't show where they were getting it from.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to finish up this part because it goes right into what we'll be talking about in the next. Now, our textbooks tells us that Nazis and Soviets were bitter enemies, and the air systems are opposites. How could a rational man support Soviets and Nazis at the same time? Is Harriman irrational, or is the inconsistencies explainable? The Bundy family, we have a memorandum on them later, gives us another example of seeming inconsistencies. William Bundy was with the Central Intelligence Agency for a decade. George Bundy was National Security Assistant to President Kennedy and Johnson. So the Bundys presumably support U.S.-European policy, which is pro-NATO. Yet the Bundys have been linked to activities and organizations which are anti-NATO and indeed pro-Marxist. For example, the Institute for Policy Studies. Are the Bundys inconsistent? Among individual members of the order, we find a wide variety of public proclaimed beliefs, ideologies, and politics. William Buckley periodically chews out the Soviets. On the other hand, member John Berthold has been a member of a dozen Communist front groups. Member William F. Coffin Jr. spent 3 years with CIA and became a leader of anti-Vietnam War activity through the National Conference for New Politics and Clergy and Laymen Concerned About Vietnam. In fact, Coffin was one of the Boston Five charged and indicted for conspiracy to violate federal laws. And of course, W. Averell Harriman is elder statesman of the Democrat Party. Quite a mixture of belief and activities. Do they reflect inconsistent philosophies? How can the order have consistent objectives with the purport, post, potpourri of individual actions? The answer is they are not all inconsistent because the objective of the order is above and beyond these actions, and in fact needs these seeming contradictions.
Yeah, and this is because they want to create conflict so that they can get control, steal public money, and move the society ever more towards Satan and satanic principles. And this is why they create the conflict and why they sponsor both sides in the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're experts on infiltrating organizations. They stole the family foundations of the Fords and the Carnegies. It's amazing, who are extremely wealthy families, but evidently were not watching what was going on. And I know this is the case even in Massachusetts. There was a very wealthy family that left money to set up a pro-life organization. Within 5 years, it was promoting abortion because its board of directors were targeted for infiltration and it was completely taken over. And there was nothing legally in the American Masonic system that could be done about it. Now, all this has a case. Let's use now translate their entire modus operandi to a case where we can see that it seems that they've done this to a Catholic organization. So let's say you want to take over the Catholic Church. Well, you can't recruit them to the lodge because in the 19th century, being a member of the Masonic Lodge was under pains of excommunication. But you need to get them to join the lodge. So what do? Well, you'd create something that would be like a lodge, right?
Yeah.
But it would be Catholic. You'd allow Catholic clergy to join it. And you would keep all the Masonic things because it is a Masonic lodge. And you'd even use the symbol of your Skull and Bones organization to show that you founded it and you've controlled it all along. And then when you put a Freemason on the throne of St. Peter, that'd be the perfect plan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they did such a thing?
Yeah.
And what organization would you say that it looks like they created?
Skull and Bones.
Yeah, but what organization do you think Skull and Bones created in the Catholic Church?
Knights of Columbus.
And why would you say that? Some of the facts. Where were they founded?
New Haven, Connecticut, 1882, I believe.
And what universities at New Haven?
Yale.
And they don't happen to, they wouldn't use the symbol of Skull and Bones, do they?
Yep.
And where do they put this symbol?
On the cross.
At the center of the cross, which is the cross is a symbol of life. For those of you who don't know, in the Catholic religion, the cross and the Skull and Bones is only put at the foot of the cross because Christ was crucified on Calvary, and it's supposed to be there that Adam was buried as a sign that death has now been conquered by life. The Skull and Bones is never put at the center of the cross. That would to be imply that death has prevailed and that Christ did not rise from the dead. So when you were a youngster, AJ, all the young men in your town were invited to join the Knights of Columbus, weren't they?
Yeah.
And you've actually been through their secret ritual.
The first 3 degrees. I did them all on
on the internet, you did all the degrees in one day. And on the internet, you can find a book published in 1918 that describes all the 3 degrees. And I read that booklet today. I have never been a member of the Knights of Columbus. And I can tell you, just from reading the book, that it is completely Masonic. Okay, it's completely Masonic. Even at the beginning, the way it phrases everything, it's clear that their intention was to bring the lodge into the church, but hide it. Now, there's a lot of strange things in it. First of all, that their members like dress in black. that they put the altar at the center of the room, which is satanic. In Catholic churches, the altar is always at one side, at the head. It's never in the center. The center has always been the location for satanic rituals. They ask the members if they believe in the three divine persons, but they don't name the divine persons.
Mm-hmm.
And they make the fourth article of their creed loyalty to the Knights of Columbus, not to the Catholic Church or anything like that. Very strange things, but it gets even stranger than that. They have all kinds of strange rituals. They have the Masonic handshake.
Mm-hmm.
They have a fake murder.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about this ritual of the fake murder. What degree was this, and what do they do in this, and what do they want you to do and not do during this murder?
Well, it was first a fake murder, then here's what it is. It's exactly word for word what happens. Then the first thing is a man will say, the captain of the guard will angrily question a man, and this happened to an elderly man, and he's like, why are you leaving in an angry voice, why are you leaving your place? I am sick, I want a glass of water. But and the same thing, go back to your place, no one may leave this place for any consideration. But I am sick, I must have a glass of water or I shall faint. And he says, okay, faint. And now the guy does faint, but no one can help him. And we did get him a glass of water, but the water was knocked out of our hands. And we see in this, there's the first two initiations of the first two degrees were nothing out of the ordinary except the questions. Now we're being violently attacked. And we were getting angry, literally. We want to defend that man. Then and that is exactly what they want you to do. React. And we did.
And what's the?
And it says, if the candidate have not yet gone beyond control, this always stirs them to fury, and they break ranks in angry confusion, struggling and shouting against the insult to the priest. But there was no priest there, and no one was dressed as a priest. They were in the black robes. And we were shouting at the fake priest. We were shouting at those guys. Then they come back. Oh,
yeah, so they consider the sign of a. Oh,
go ahead.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so they want you not to react and not to defend. They want you not to defend this elderly man as a sign that you're worthy to become a member.
Mm-hmm.
That's the exact opposite of Christian morals. It's satanic. Go ahead, AJ.
And then finally, they keep pushing your buttons. and then it says the candidates are to be aroused to the last extreme of fury, but are to be handled so that they cannot do anything. If the candidates are strong enough to overcome the guards and demand apologies and explanations, the captain of the guard has slipped away, and the Grand Knight comes out and quiets the tempest. So then they would come back in and say, "Oh, we apologize about what the captain of the guard did. Don't worry about him. He's just trying to play two parts at once."
And they do this to test whether you're going to obey them, even to the point of letting them do violence to an elderly man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just not even Christian.
But
this is not all of it, right?
Mm-mm. Then the members who are in the black robes are then blindfolded. Now we are blindfolded, and the members in this inner sanctum are in the black robes with masks on, the opera masks. And we are blindfolded. And we have to put our hands on the shoulders in front of us, and anyone behind us has to do the same. The guards give the signal, the doors are opened. And the candidates march into the council chamber. They are marched around the room several times, halting in a hollow square facing the center. The blinds are removed. The doctors are seated around the table, covered with surgical instruments and writing paper. The Grand Knight sits near the table. The members of the order, all covered with black robes, stand behind the candidates. The chief surgeon stands up and calls several of the candidates and decoys. The guard leads them to the table. Now the chief surgeon, before you may go further, you must show that you are worthy. You must submit to a test of strength that will satisfy the order that you are in earnest. He calls on one of the decoys to take the first test. The chief surgeon, then, I have here a copy of the pledge which you must take to the order. I have also a dagger picking up from the table he's picking up a dagger. You will take this dagger, bury your arm, prick your veins, and sign the pledge with your own blood. Are you willing to take the test? The decoy feigns reluctance and plays that he is afraid to take the test. And the chief surgeon goes on, you must take the test or you cannot go on. Are you afraid of a little blood? There are doctors here who will see that you do not injure yourself. Do you call yourself a man afraid of picking a little vein? I cannot take such a pledge. You have no right to ask it. The chief surgeon, you will step aside for a moment. We shall take up your case at once. Calls one of the candidates. Are you willing to take this dagger, prick a vein of your arm, and sign your name to this pledge? Generally, the candidate says yes, and prepares to undertake the task, but before he can do so, one of the guards whispers to the chief surgeon, who turns and addresses the candidate. While we are trying the case of this candidate who has refused to pledge, it will be necessary for all of you to retire. The guards will lead to the room where you will remain until you are summoned again. And the candidates are led to a hot room, which happened because they turned the AC off. When they are all in, the door is fastened and masked guards are stationed inside and outside the door. The hot box must be small enough to make it difficult to move about easily without jostling. Then the captain of the guard is found inside and mingles with the candidates. So then, of course, the decoy priest soon complains of the heat and has to be let outside. The captain of the guard refuses to let him go. They quarrel, and the decoy priest says he is going to go out whether the captain of the guard likes it or not. The guards and decoy keep between the decoy priest, the captain, and the candidates. The decoy priest starts to push the captain aside. The captain slaps him over the mouth. Decoy priest reels from the blow, and blood seems to flow from his mouth. He has had some red gum in his mouth, which gives his sputum the appearance of blood. At once there is an uproar. Some of the decoys shout to be let out. Others pound upon the door. The candidates are aroused to fury, and again trying to make you react. And again and again.
So it shows clearly that the whole purpose is to show you that they're an organization that wants to control people's reactions and get them to do things through a whole false and fake narrative, which is what Skull and Bones does through its Hegelian tactics. Now, how do they want you to come out of this hot room? Do they want you to change how you're dressed?
Yeah. But first, after all the fighting in the show and everything, there's a trial. Then captain of the guard will begin to be tried by the Grand Knight. The man will be tried at once. 7 men will be picked from their number as a jury. The charges will be made in due order, and the verdict of the jury will be received as a final. Are they willing to abide by such a procedure? They all answer yes. Then we are told to sit down in chairs around the wall, and the jury is selected. The Secret Service man is one of the jurors. The 7 are called to be middle of the chamber and lined up before the table. Then the Grand Knight tells us we have to empty all of our pockets, everything. And so then they do all their it's just a strange trial, and I don't know how to say it, but if you read this book, you'll see what this trial goes through. I mean, all of your belongings are stripped from you, and you sit among this wall and you're watching this whole thing play out. And they have a cap gun, a revolver cap gun, just a toy that fires caps, noisemakers. And the Secret Service guy has the cap gun, and they struggle and everything, and it's just, and they do another mock murder, and they shoot the captain of the guard in the chest, and he falls into the arms of the guards. And under the robe is a rubber bag full of red fluid. This is pierced by a knife just before the shot, gives the delusion of blood flowing from his breast. And of course, confusion, more confusion, dramatic climax. And of course, what is that? There is one part that I can't find anymore. the candidates are stripped into the underwear.
They made all the young men take all their clothes off except for their underwear.
Yeah. Then you were supposed to lay on that table.
Now, this organization, Knights of Columbus, and this ritual is supposed to have been developed by a priest.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he write in the ritual that all the young men must strip down to their underwear? I mean, excuse my commentary, but only a pedophile would write such a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole organization was founded in New Haven when Skull and Bones had already come to power.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you one thing: Catholics in the 19th century would have never had young men stripped to their underwear, let alone a priest. He would have never. And they certainly wouldn't have taken the symbol of the skull and bones and put it in their society at the center of the cross, where you should have the head of Christ.
Yeah.
It is just completely bizarre. This is just not Catholic. To manipulate people with lies, even if it's theatrical, that it's just diabolic. But that's exactly what the mainstream media does. That's exactly what the Lodge does. This ritual is completely Masonic. Completely. There's nothing Catholic to it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were still doing this ritual when you were a young man.
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
Late 1999 to early 2000s.
Is it not surprising that the Knights of Columbus should have supported the hierarchy that promoted pedophilia for decades upon decades if the ritual begins with young men stripped down to their underwear? Is it at all surprising to anyone out there?
No. And what they called the inner sanctum was the lodge room. Now, why would they call it a lodge room?
One thing I noticed, and tell me if this is true in Kansas, and I always thought this was strange. As an anthropologist, I observe things maybe from a distance and try to figure out what's in New England. Every town that had a Masonic lodge did not have a chapter of the Knights of Columbus. And every town without a Masonic lodge had a chapter of the Knights of Columbus. Almost as if there's an agreement there not to compete. Now, in Kansas, is that also true? Is there Knights of Columbus in towns without the Masonic lodge?
There are Knights of Columbus with the Masonic lodge, but in towns where there's a Masonic temple, you can't. I don't think there's a actual Knights of Columbus hall, because where they did all of this was in the get this, folks, the great school gymnasium of the Catholic school of the parish in town.
They had all the boys stripped to their underwear in the gymnasium of a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
That's just bizarre. And so when a man strips down to his underwear, he's put on an operating table.
Mm-hmm.
And he's surrounded by those who have already been initiated.
Mm-hmm.
Is he touched?
Not sure. Just probably.
Do they all look at him, or they turn their backs to
him? They first look at you, then they turn your backs on you because, well, you're not a member yet of this degree.
And they do this to you after making you sweat in a hot room.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just in your underwear, you're sweaty and you're in your underwear.
Mm-hmm. And you're also still, you're still built up full of anger and rage of what you just keep seeing, like, okay, this guy can't have a drink of water. Then you got this guy with a gun struggling with this guy, and you're like, What the heck's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, how much more similar is that to pedophiles who want to see hot, sexy boys in underwear? I mean, I think you can say with absolute certainty the Knights of Columbus was founded by pedophiles, Freemasons, and most likely this organization was created by Skull and Bones to infiltrate the Catholic Church and take over the parishes and even the clergy. And I will just, as a side comment, I'd say about 90% of all the pedophile clergy and bishops in the United States are Irish, and Knights of Columbus is an Irish organization.
Yeah. And
so we're not saying we're absolutely certain about this.
let's see. You there?
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm just getting the connection is coming and going today. I'm getting a lot of interruptions, but you draw your own conclusions from the facts, and Sutton's book is there. Would you like to make more comments about the Knights, AJ? What was your impression of the young men who were brought into this ceremony?
Well, I found it all kind of interesting how all of us classmates, we were freshmen in high school. Like, so you want to join the lodge this year? Not the lodge, but Knights of Columbus. Like, sure. And they had, all the top brass, in the council of the area come up and talk to you. It's cool. I was like, okay. Then they started chit-chatting you after mass and handing you those Knights of Columbus Tootsie Rolls, and so I was standing outside here and thinking, what's so big a deal about that?
Well, the Tootsie Roll is used by homosexuals to signify certain things I won't say on open air.
Yeah, then I thought, okay, it's just going to be just us guys, classmates, friends. But no, we had one guy in his 30s from a town in Oakley where this was held. Then one crazy dude out of state, probably 40s. And all this tussling, fighting going on that we were, taking part in that hot room. Something slips out of his wallet. A male contraceptive.
Obviously in the presence of pedophiles, obviously.
And the elderly gentleman who was the decoy to rile us all up, to go on to his side to defend him. And I mean, the knocks on the door, then the knocks on the inside of the door, and the Latin phrases had to be used to say, to open the door or whatever, and them wearing the dark gowns. Then that third one, their faces are covered, all in black. The lights are off, except the light over those things. And there was no candles and cross on the so-called altar. There was an image of Christopher Columbus, the skull and bones, and the giant compass, and a giant rope with a noose on it. And if I knew what I knew now, I would say no.
So they get impressionable young men to join who would go through with this, who don't have well-formed consciences. So these are the facts, and you draw your own conclusions from it. But since it is a tactic of Skull and Bones to infiltrate organizations at the beginning and use them to destroy their enemies, I think we could say that we definitely all must consider as a highly probable, though this information we've presented today certainly doesn't prove it without a doubt, that Knights of Columbus is a Skull and Bones organization, and that they know it, and the depth of the organization. And this might explain why they recruit some of the most corrupt members of Congress into their organization, and have no problem with them being members, and why Bergoglio rushes to beatify their founder, but forbids the beatification of Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who spoke about the Antichrist.
Yeah. What was it? Members of the Knights of Columbus in New York City were part of wasn't they a part of the abortion bill?
They have taken, some of their members have promoted abortion and the legislatures that push abortion. And that has been a controversy for more than 20 years. And why they won't kick these members out has always been unexplained. But if they are a Masonic organization, then that's their precise purpose, to recruit people who aren't faithful to faith, to promote them as Catholics, and to use their money to infiltrate the church and take over the church from within. I mean, it's perfect Masonic strategy. So I don't see anything Catholic in their ritual or how they run their organization. I see all these key points are all Masonic and all line up with Masonic values. So why Catholics would act that way is inexplicable, but why Freemasons would act that way is perfectly understandable. So, and then the scamdemic is completely controlled. You heard the Gates family. The Gates family is one of the families in Skull and Bones, and Bill Gates. His family like this is with Harriman's and Planned Parenthood, and they're behind the scamdemic. Trump is totally in favor of the scamdemic. The scamdemic's not going to go away. He's going to be, his reelection is being pushed so they can push it through. About the only person that could prevent the scamdemic now would be if that Robert Kennedy, who's against vaccines, would become president. There's no chance of that. He's not running on the ticket. So, and he's pro-abortion, so that doesn't make much sense. So we have to understand that unless we act as Catholics without compromise and resist all the people who have been brainwashed, who have drunk the Kool-Aid, or who are just don't want to admit the world they're in, we're going to only become more enslaved by these people. So what are the solutions? The solutions are join the Catholic Party in the United States, and we're not just saying this. A lot of you people have heard it, and none of you have, you know, except maybe 3 people, none of you have reacted to it. This shows you how deeply you are still confused, how deeply you are just so disoriented, okay? Thankfully, 500 of you is sharing our program and listen to it. That's good. But we don't have 500 messages on the party's webpage, christianpartyforamerica.wordpress.com. People saying, I want to join up. We need a party to save us. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Catholic principles and politics and how you discern a Catholic candidate. You know, what is a truly pro-life candidate, for example? We're getting already, Skull and Bones has already tried to infiltrate the party right from the beginning, and we see their tactics right from the back. And so we know that they know we're their enemy, and we've had Masons come on the website and leave answers. We haven't Catholics praising us much, but Freemasons have come there and made it quite clear by their language that they are Freemasons. So we're on their hit list, and we need Catholics now. This is the crusade that Christ wants for us in our generation. We have to take back America for Christ. Not for the Republican Party, that's part of the Masonic system. Not for the Yankee families that have been enslaving us. We don't want to be on the Yankee plantation anymore. We don't want to be in the racist Masonic satanic plantation, okay? America is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, not the land of slaves and cowards.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to start acting like honest people. You have all these people that praise revolutionaries, but you need to praise crusaders, because the revolutionaries aren't going to solve this problem. You need crusaders, and only Catholics can do it. So you have to show that you're Catholic and not just tweet about it. You know, it's so gay just to tweet and not do anything. And the Masonic education has neutered you. It has made you a couch potato, do nothing, emasculated, absolute wimp. Okay, that's the truth. And I've been doing the apostolate for 30 years, and I can tell you, nearly all the men in the Catholic Church in the United States are absolute wimps. They're not willing to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the courage. And you guys need to repent of that, because you'll go to hell and you'll lead your nation to hell unless you wake up and start acting like men with balls, because you're not. Okay. And this you can see in almost any kind of organization that you try to do any kind of good. There's just nothing out there. So what we need is repentance. You need to get on your knees and say, I repent of being a slave of the Masonic system, and inform yourself. Read this book by Sutton. Okay. This is not a program. Sutton, we didn't write the book by Sutton. It's been out there 30 years. Okay. I don't think he followed up with his others books. I think he died before he could finish his work, but you haven't heard Sutton's name because, and you haven't even heard the Brown Brothers Harriman Banks name, because they keep a shield over it. They don't let it be talked about. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have to use pawns like the Bushes or the Trumps or Soros, because their names will be tarnished by going out in the public, because we'll recognize after a while that these people are false. But the people behind it that keep launching these false leaders at us, they're relatively unknown, and you need to get to know who they are. And so you can orientate yourself on how to react.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to the viewers, AJ?
I say we need real active members for the Catholic Party of America. I mean, I can do what I can from being homebound, and can't travel too well. And we need members in Kansas who will just be done with the status quo, done with the Masonic thinking. We need members all over the 50 states and U.S. territories that take part in the elections to join and form the Catholic Party wherever they are. And we need members who will be actively recruit people, not just inner circle people, but every ordinary citizen, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox. We are the Catholic Party, but we are also the Christian Party. And someone asked, why is your education platform like that? Well, I shared them the 3 screenshots by Sutton about the education system. We got to break it first. Then we start to be truly, fully Catholic. So we gotta take a demolition team to undo everything Skull and Bones has done and is doing to this country, and rebuild it before they took over. And so we need members who are not fearful, who are courageous, who doesn't really care what people say about them. We just need active, strong members who has the heart of a lion and trustworthy to join.
I would add, you have to make this your work 24/7. This is a spiritual apostolate, but it's also political. Don't get out of your mind the Masonic lie that what is religion and what is politics should be separated, or that what is spiritual and what is physical should be separated, okay? Just like you can jog down the road while saying your Hail Marys, you can recruit people to a political party for the cause of Jesus Christ. And you should recruit every friend, relative, and family member, okay? And if you can't recruit, you need to recruit, that needs to be your target, and you have to convince them to do the same, okay? Because we don't need $500 million for a party. People say, how are you gonna do it? You just need that commitment. Recruit all your family members and all your friends and relatives, okay? And convince them to do the same thing and pass it down. And then in a few months, you could build the party up to a major organization in the United States. But this is what you need to be. We're willing to have meetings with people who want to found state chapters, but it can't be because you just want to sit down and talk to us and smile and say, you know, after a week, we recruited one person. Okay, if all you can do is recruit one person a week, thank you for the help, but you cannot help the party grow. You just don't have the talents, or you don't have the will, or you don't have the commitment, okay? And if you think the threat is so great that recruiting one person is sufficient, and you should be ashamed of yourself, okay? And like AJ, I'm limited in what to do. I'm a monk, and I happen to be in Europe founding a Catholic party here in Italy. So my time is divided. What I can do on the show here is all I can spare. You have to want to save your country, your family, your nation, your people, your way of life. You have to want to be liberated from this land of darkness that Skull and Bones has thrown over you, and return to a Catholic Christian civilization. You cannot love darkness. And loving darkness today only requires that you don't do anything. And I'm totally convinced that our Lord inspired AJ and I to start this whole concept of a Christian party in America because he wants his people free. But you don't have to go to hell and to serve Satan today doesn't require any action. You just stay on your couch right where you are, keep playing your video games, keep liking things and never retweeting them, and never donate to anything, and just say, you're right, but I'm going to keep living the way I've lived, and then you'll go to hell. And then you'll be vaccinated and you'll be murdered, and if a gun is put in your hand, they'll be telling you to shoot your neighbor in order to prove that you're a citizen. And these people are completely dishonest. We need a party that's not just anti-Masonic. We need a party that wants to restore Jesus Christ and completely destroy the lodge, okay? And I'll say it out there because I'm not afraid of the lodge. All the assets of the Masonic families need to be confiscated and used to pay off the national debt. They robbed the national treasury, let them pay for it, okay? These racist, bastard, Nazi, pig, satanic scum need to be wiped out of the face of the earth. This is a war between God and his people and the forces of darkness, and we cannot brook any quarter. We cannot leave any task undone. How complete they have been over 180 years to conquer us all. But united together with the forces of Christ, we can take it back in just a few years, because you are now red-pilled, and so act on it. Just don't say, I'm totally amazed, and then don't do anything, okay? Because the effect of their propaganda is that you don't do anything. So as long as you don't do anything, you're under their power. Just like a person who's deep in sin, as long as he doesn't repent, is still under Satan's power, okay? And these people are satanic, and what they're doing is satanic. If you think the Supreme Court can declare abortion is okay and marriage is okay, and that you have to follow that law, you are in the state of mortal sin, and you are a Freemason. You can go to any Latin mass you want to do with all the symbols and bells and incense, but you're going to be damned, because that is not the religion of Jesus Christ. A pro-life president doesn't want to appoint a Supreme Court justice so that someday Roe and Wade isn't thing. A pro-life president sends the military into every clinic, shuts it down, takes every abortionist, puts them on military trial, and has them shot. That's a pro-life president, okay? And takes any political party in favor of abortion and closes it down and confiscates their assets and deports their sorry asses out of the country so they never come back under the pain of death. That's a pro-life president, okay? And every president of the United States has the authority to do those things, because there's nothing in any law written by man that requires a national leader not to defend the unborn. Nothing. And if you think there is, you're not pro-life. You're not even Catholic. You're not even sane, because the state exists to punish the wicked, not to punish the innocent in the womb. You can never legalize that. You have so many people that are just so brainwashed, and they say, well, it's a law of the land. He can't do anything. Their mind has just been so played with. It's pitiful. Excuse me, but I've seen so much abortion in my life. Not firsthand. I don't know anyone who's had an abortion. I come from a good Catholic family, but it's intolerable that 60 million children have been put to death. And people are saying, he's pro-life because he hopes someday Roe versus Wade will be overturned. It's not pro-life at all. Stop with it. Stop with the lies. Stop with the Masonic propaganda. Vote for a Catholic party that's really be pro-life and will kick ass, because this is what needs to be done in America now. We have to stop with the fancy words, and we need to start kicking butt with a metal-toed boot, kind of kicking butt, without any shame and any sense of delicacy. These people deserve no delicacy, okay, because they're vicious monsters. They're vicious monsters, the whole lot of them.
I think someone took a photo of me.
Yeah, it does look like that. I saw the screen snatch like that.
Hello.
Yeah, we know that they're watching us, but we don't care. We're saying the truth. You need to share this video. We want to thank you for sharing the previous video. 500 people saw it. Now, hopefully 500 people come to this video and share it. Let's get to 25,000, okay? So if our 50 people can share it to 500, our 500 should be able to share it to 5,000 or 25,000. Make this an apostolate. Don't share it with just the friends you think are like it. Share it with everyone, okay? Share both of them with everyone, and get people to talking about it, because even non-Christians, once they realize they're being run and controlled by Skull and Bones, are going to say, hey, wait, we don't want any of this. Okay, and as I said many times before, if you let cities burn down, you're just as guilty as the people who burn them down. And politicians who let cities burn down, whether they're in the state capitol or in DC, are just as guilty as wanting them to burn down. So we need to wake up and recognize who the true enemy is, and wage war on the true enemy, which is Skull and Bones' lodge in the United States.
Mm-hmm. So we need active membership for the Christian Party of America. To join, all you gotta do, you don't even have to give money to join. Be an active member. Recruit everybody in your town, because mostly it's a Catholic town or a Protestant town, and they'll read it and be like, that sounds familiar, like America, where all this craziness began. So go town to town, county by county, just recruit. Then make sure they have, email, internet, Zoom account. Tell them how to join just by sending that message from the contact form. And we'll either get you on the 12:15 on Mondays or 3 p.m. on Fridays, or if you recruit hundreds of people and need other days, let us know.
Yeah, and these meetings with us on Zoom are not social hours, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're the kind of person who's lonely and just wants to talk to someone, go watch a talking head. We're about saving America. We're not about holding your hand. This is not pansy time. This is not wallflower time, okay? And if all you can recruit is one person a week, you should be ashamed and not come back to the next week meeting until you recruit 250, okay? Because everyone knows more than one friend, okay? Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to say. We can't, we're not here to spend time with people that just want a friend, okay? Mm-hmm. Just want a friend, I'm sorry. America is burning, and you want friends. You have to get over your narcissism here, okay? And unfortunately, the lodge has gotten most of us addicted to so much narcissism that we're totally incapable of doing anything, even to save our own nation. But the few of you out there who aren't addicted to narcissism and can rise above that, you need to get active, okay? Don't give your loyalty to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. You got to give your loyalty to Jesus Christ. And don't think the Republican Party is here to save you. It's all orchestrated political theater to push the gay agenda, the Masonic agenda, the demonic agenda, and to keep the churches closed down. Why are the churches remaining closed? Trump paid them $3.5 billion to stay closed. And you think he's in favor of you practicing your religion? You're smoking weed if you think that. Okay. And just because he kneels in front of a statue of John Paul II and his wife leaves flowers in front of a statue of Our Lady, don't be fooled. If he cared about the Catholic religion, he'd order the churches open. He'd arrest all the pedophile priests, and he'd arrest all the Marxist bishops. Okay? Has he done that? No, and he would never do that because in the Masonic system, they would never defend the church.
Yeah. So tell them where to go.
Yeah, go to christianpartyforamerica.wordpress.com. That's Christian Party for FOR America.wordpress.com, and you can leave a message there if you'd like to join the party for AJ. And we'd like really zealous people to think about starting state chapters, okay? And we're going to set a high bar. We want to see people that produce, because if you can't recruit, okay, that's fine. Pray for the victory of the party, but if you don't have the talents to promote it. But try to recruit someone who does have the talents, especially someone who used to be active maybe in the Republican Party, but realizes that they're just traitors and they don't care anything about America anymore. People opposed to the scamdemic, and try to recruit them and get them to be active. And then share information from Sutton's books or our programs about Skull and Bones and who is really members of that organization and how they've been playing us for a century. And get people to open their eyes to a totally different way of politics, normality, Christianity. That's sanity, okay? And you have to come out of your little private lives. You have to get off your couch potato, and you're going to have to dedicate a good portion of your private time to this. Get rid of all the useless activities you belong to, clubs and organizations. Forget that all. Saving America has to be your number one I mean, I think with the cities burning down, more than 50 cities burning in America, you should realize that the enemy is in the gates now. There's no time for soccer clubs, bridge clubs, senior centers visits. There's no time for any of that. You got to save your country, or you're not going to have a country. And if you don't have a gun, you better get a license and go out and get a gun, because we're not headed to peace. We're headed to forced vaccinations. And Trump every day is telling you is going to be vaccines. His own CDC says the vaccine won't be ready December, and then he corrects it and says, no, the vaccines will be ready by winter. So he's so eager on that, it's unbelievable. And he's never done anything for us, just face it. Trump has never done anything for any of us, okay? And that's what he claimed he was going to be elected for. And Biden wouldn't do anything either, okay? So I'm not saying that I want Biden to win, but I'm saying Trump to win it. No matter who wins, they win, because they're men, okay? Harriman was a Democratic Party headquarters. That's why all our Republican candidates have come from the Democratic Party. Nixon was a skull and bones guy. Reagan was a former Democrat, became Republican. Trump, former Democrat, became Republican. Bush both Bushes were skull and bones. So Eisenhower was skull and bones. You would have to go back to Theodore Roosevelt, I think, to find a president that was a Republican and not a skull and bones man. So it's been more than 120 years. If you think the Republican Party is to save you, you are deceived of the deceived, okay? They are the enemy with a nice face put over it. They're the deceptive enemy that plays to be your friend, but really stabs you in the back every time.
Yeah. So this has been a very great show. I hope you all share it. I mean, I want you to share it on your social medias if they'll allow it. But email it to your friends, family, relatives, everyone. Email the YouTube link, BitChute link, everything, even the Mixcloud audio. Email them all, share them all, get the truth out there.
Share the URL for Ordo Militaris Radio TV's page for this show. And or you could share the URL for the page to this show at fromrome.info, because I'll publish all the program there too.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's the Ordo Militaris one will have a link to the book. Yeah. And get the message out. Be active now. Every person you can convince to join the party is one more soldier in the fight for America. Okay, mm-hmm. You got to wake people up and red pill them, because the time now is short. Their game is far, far advanced, and we have no friends. And don't waste time with their clergy. They're already controlled and taken over. Okay, they could move their little pinky without being shut down. Okay, mm-hmm. You got to go with the lay people, the common people. They're the ones that still have sanity left. The ones who don't spend all their day on social media, on television, and the ones who don't read the newspapers, the ones who aren't politically active, they'll be the easiest to recruit because they're already outside of the systems of control.
Yep. So this is Ordo Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.